Hello everyone. Today I'm presenting Cute Consumerism, Eastern Designs and Western Hype for Art History 701, where I'll explore how the work of Asian artists have become increasingly visible in modern Western youth culture. Over the past few decades, visual styles influenced by anime, designer toys, collectible figurines, and streetwear have spread widely through social media, fashion, and global retail markets. These objects often blur the line between fine art and commercial products. One especially visible example in the United States is Bowe, a mischievous character created by Hong Kong fine artist and illustrator Ka Sing-Leung. The figure has become a global collectible icon. As journalist Anro Gabilan writes, Labubu has now become one of the most talked about collectibles on the planet. But Labubu is only one example within a larger system known as hype culture, where scarcity, social media, and fan communities shape value. As Hunter Martinez also explains, these are not just toys. They are hype culture artifacts, their value amplified by social media and manufactured scarcity. Together, these objects reveal what happens when art, global media, and consumer culture collide. Before diving further into the research, I want to explain why this topic caught my attention in the first place. I'm a middle school teacher, and like many teachers, I spend a lot of time watching the strange ecosystem of internet culture that my students bring into the classroom. Recently, one of the things they have been obsessed with is what they call brain rot humor, which is a kind of way of making fun of what's broadly considered to be the worst and most cringe-inducing of pop culture. Labubu has become widely associated with brain rot memes and jokes. Some of my students unironically love Labubu, collecting and talking about the toys constantly. However, others hate it with a shocking amount of passion. I've watched students argue many times about whether Labubu is adorable or deeply unsettling. That kind of reaction made me curious. Why does a small collectible toy generate such strong opinions? While collectibles like these, as well as many others created by other Asian artists that have grown popular here, are often ridiculed online or dismissed as strange internet trends, their popularity also reflects something much larger happening in contemporary American culture. Creations like these frequently become the subject of jokes and criticism. When something spreads quickly through social media and youth culture, it's pretty easy to label it as shallow or purely commercial. But what's amazing surrounding this art is much more complicated than that. For many artists, these objects represent a new pathway for creative expression, as well as global visibility. This leads to my central argument of my presentation. Contemporary Asian visual culture has gained significant visibility within Western hype culture through designer toys, fashion collaborations, and collectible media. However, the same global market systems that elevate artists such as Takashi Murakami and Ka Sing-Leung also shape how their work circulates, encouraging repetition, branding, and collectible formats driven by consumer demand. Over the past several decades, Asian visual culture has become increasingly influential within global media and consumer markets. Again, trendy aesthetics shaped by anime, manga, gaming, character design, and even more now circulate widely through international entertainment industries and online communities. As Koichi Iwabuchi explains, in recentering globalization, popular culture, and Japanese transnationalism, Asian media industries and cultural forms are playing a substantial role in global cultural flows. That is, these cultural exports do not simply replicate Western media dominance. Instead, they reflect shifting patterns of global influence. Iwabuchi argues that globalization increasingly reflects an organization of diversity rather than a replication of uniformity. Much of this circulation now happens through what is commonly referred to as hype culture, once again, a term that is used to describe products that rapidly gain popularity and demand through the internet, social media, and online communities. As researchers writing about trendiness and marketing for the Beijing Film Academy explain, through the rapid dissemination of online marketing, niche cultures are increasingly transforming into mainstream trends. Indeed, that which is popular starts small, but because these objects spread so quickly online, they are often dismissed as illegitimate art. Yet hype-driven collectibles are not unique to Asian creators. Western toys, such as Beanie Babies and Cabbage Patch Kids, also created massive collecting frenzies in earlier decades, and many older collectors still treat them as nostalgic and legitimate collectibles. What is interesting is that newer collectibles created by Asian artists, especially those spreading through the internet culture, often receive far more harsh criticism and ridicule than American-made toys, such as Beanie Babies in the United States. Yet despite this, the overwhelming response to these objects is still love and enthusiasm. If anything, their popularity shows that there is far more fascination and affection surrounding them than scorn. Another key concept for understanding this kind of art is the idea of art toys. which are sometimes called designer toys. Art toys are collectible figurines created by established artists, illustrators, or designers. They are often produced in limited editions and marketed primarily to art collectors more so than children, placing them somewhere between artistic objects and consumer products. Importantly, these toys are not created only by large corporations. Many independent artists and small design studios produce their own collectible figures, often beginning as small artistic projects that later gain wider popularity. Critics of mass culture have long argued that commercial systems can standardize creative production. As Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer write in The Culture Industry, Enlightenment as Mass Deception, technology of the culture industry is no more than the achievement of standardization and mass production. Modern critics sometimes make similar arguments about collectible toys. As Claire Kim argues in Cute Creepy Capitalist, The Labubu Fad, Labubus are unnecessary byproducts of social media algorithms and exploitative marketing strategies. Critics often dismiss art toys because they are mass-produced and commercially sold, or because of valid concerns about the companies that manufacture them. But mass production has long existed within the art world. Highly well-known contemporary artists, whether one likes them or not, such as Andy Warhol and Jeff Koons, famously used industrial production techniques in their work, and their pieces now appear in major metropolitan museums. Even outside the art world, designing mass-produced objects requires creative skill. Products like Barbie dolls or other iconic toys are not simply manufactured objects. They are the result of extensive artistic design. Certainly, there are many valid arguments to be made against large companies such as Mattel or Labubu's Pop Mart, but it is still possible to recognize that a company may have issues while also acknowledging that the artists they employ can be genuinely creative, talented, and sincere in how they hope their work will affect audiences. To better understand how Asian artists participate in global hype culture, it helps to look at two influential case examples: Japanese artist Takashi Murakami and Hong Kong artist Ka-Sing Leung. Takashi Murakami is one of the most internationally recognized contemporary artists working today. Born in Tokyo in 1962, Murakami originally trained in traditional Japanese painting before developing his own artistic philosophy known as superflat, an art movement that draws heavily from anime, manga, and kawaii aesthetics, combining these influences with contemporary fine art practices. Early in his career, Murakami primarily exhibited his work in galleries and museums, where he built an international following among collectors and critics. Over time, however, his designs expanded beyond the gallery and into fashion, design, and global consumer culture. Murakami collaborated with major brands such as Louis Vuitton and produced sculptures, prints, and collectible toys that circulate widely outside traditional art spaces. As one scholar has observed, the sheer veracity of culture being produced on the internet obviates the need for elitist cultural gatekeepers. Financial interests ultimately determine what is and isn't art. Of course, many strongly disagree with that idea. Some argue that if art becomes too popular, it loses artistic value. However, others claim that if something is not widely recognized or influential enough, it should not be considered important art either. These contradictory standards reveal how difficult it can be to define artistic legitimacy if considering commercial value alone. A more recent example can be seen in the work of Hong Kong illustrator Ka-Sing Leung. Leung was born in 1972 and spent part of his childhood in the Netherlands, where he developed an interest in drawing and fantasy storytelling. Before Labubu toys ever existed, Leung was already known for his illustrated picture books and character designs. Labubu first appeared as a background character in one of his illustrated stories before later being adapted into toys and other kinds of merchandise, originally intended for the fans of his earlier work. Like Murakami's characters, his designs gained a following among fans before becoming globally recognizable. Like Murakami, his intentions for going into art was to bring enjoyment to audiences. As Leung explained in an interview with Perfect magazine following the sudden boom of success with his toy line, "A girl came up to me crying and said, 'Thank you, you bring so much joy.' That made me very happy. We live in the real world where everyday reality is sad. We need joy. If Labubu brings joy to people, then I would like for them to be alive." Moments like this show that these characters often function as more than simple consumer products. For many fans, they represent emotional connection, creativity, and community. However, commercial success does still influence artistic direction. When certain characters become too popular, companies and audiences often expect new versions that look similar to the originals. As a result, artists working within commercial systems sometimes repeat recognizable designs, rather than constantly experimenting with new visual ideas. This tension between artistic creativity and the expectations of global consumer markets is one of the defining dynamics of contemporary hype culture. Thank you for watching. The following sources informed my research and ideas discussed in my presentation.